Story time about how my husband's trying to convince me to become an escort. My husband and I have been married for almost 6 years. We did get separated for 2 years, so technically we've been together for around 4 years. We had separated during COVID mainly because he doesn't want to have kids and I desperately want to have children. And yes, when we got married, we did talk about having kids and he said he wasn't sure. But after we got married, he basically told me that he did not want to have kids, which is obviously something that I did not sign up for when I married him. I began to resent him a lot because I could have been with somebody else, someone who wanted to have kids. But instead I spent years with him only to find out that he did not want to have kids. I ended up asking him for a break, and that was basically during COVID. So we were basically broken up for all of 2020. This is where I'm assuming he started getting his ideas. We finally got back together in 2021. I had gone on a couple of dates with some really terrible guys, and I basically thought to myself, well, you know, my husband's not like that, so I guess I should get back with him. As soon as we moved in together, he started talking about escorts. He told me one of his friends uses an escort service, and he thought it might be a good idea to start one. After he told me he was thinking about starting his own escort agency, I completely lost it. First off, I didn't want my husband to be involved in that, and secondly, I just think it would bring so many problems. He told me that we should just think about it, and I asked him to show me numbers. You know, how much do people make? And he didn't know anything about it. He had done zero research. After that, we didn't speak about it for a few weeks. Not until he asked me what I thought about being an escort. At first, I was confused, like, me being an escort? Or what I thought about escorts being escorts. I told him escorts can do anything they want, as long as they're safe and happy. Then he said, well, we should look into you becoming an escort. I started to laugh and he's like, no, I'm serious. And that's when it hit me. This whole time he was trying to convince me to become an escort? His own wife? What does that say about us? What does that say about the relationship and how he feels about me? So I turned it around and told him that he should become an escort. Then he said, I'm not as good looking as you, so I wouldn't make enough money. That's when he confessed that he had signed me up to 2 different escort websites. And he had conversations with guys pretending to be me. That's when he confessed that he had already signed me up to several escort websites and that he had been having conversations with different men pretending to be me. Then he pulls out his phone and shows me all the conversations. Most of the men were trying to make me their sugar babies and were offering me upwards of $5,000 a month just to go on dates with him. The look in my husband's face was of excitement and happiness. I was mortified. I couldn't believe that my husband was even entertaining the idea. After he finishes showing me all of the messages between him and these other men, he tells me that we could be earning about $22,000 a month, and all I'd have to do is just go on dates with these guys. I started to cry and he told me that I was overreacting and that most women would kill to be in my place. I told him these men would expect much more than just going on dates, and he swears up and down that they won't. Now the thing is, we have had money trouble, so I see where he's coming from, but I just don't know. He's still trying to convince me and he shows me messages from these guys every single day. Most of these men are in their 50s, and one of these guys was actually really attractive. The money sounds so good, but I don't know what to do. I feel like I would resent my husband eventually. I mean, what if I fall in love with one of them? What should I do?
Imagine sending your children off to Girl Scout camp only for it to be the last time you see them alive. In June of 1997, 3 families sent their daughters, Lori Farmer, 8, Michelle Gousset, 9, and Denise Milner, 10, off to Camp Scott Girl Scout Camp in Locust Grove, Oklahoma. Doris Denise Milner had told her mother earlier that day before she boarded the bus that she didn't want to go, but her mother told her everything would be fine and if she didn't feel well when she got there, then to give them a call and they'd pick her up. Sadly, Doris Miller never got to make any calls to her mother after that day. That night, the 3 girls went to sleep in their tents and a thunderstorm rolled into the early hours of the next morning. The tents were fanned out around the counselors' quarters in order to keep an eye on the girls. However, the tent that Farmer, Gousset, and Milner were in was the farthest and hardest to see. A counselor named Carla Willite heard a guttural moan sound coming from the main road and went to investigate, but ended up assuming that it was an animal from the main road and returned to bed. The next morning at 6 a.m., she made a grisly discovery on her way to the showers. She discovered the bodies of the 3 girls on the side of the trail in their sleeping bags nearly 150 yards from their tent. When police arrived, they found the girls' tent covered in blood. These 3 young, innocent girls had been sexually assaulted and murdered in gruesome ways. As they investigated the events of that night, they found out the strange noises that several other campers heard throughout the night. Around 1:30 a.m., multiple people heard moaning noises, which is around the same time that Willite heard it and went to investigate but couldn't find the source. Approximately 30 minutes later, a camper in Tent 7 was awoken by someone with a flashlight opening the flaps of the tent. Around 3 in the morning, another girl heard a scream coming from where Tent 8 was located, which is the tent that the girls were staying in. At the same time, another camper heard a scream followed by someone crying, "Mama, Mama!" Unsure what to do, both girls went back to sleep. Throughout the 400-acre campsite, they found duct tape, rope, a flashlight, and women's eyeglasses in tent number 8. The flashlight had newspaper stuffed inside to keep the batteries from rattling and duct tape over the lens to dull the light. The duct tape and rope matched the kind that was used on the 3 girls. In a nearby cave, police found evidence that someone had been living inside. The newspapers inside matched the issue that was inside the flashlight. If that wasn't enough evidence, the words, "The killer was here, bye bye fools, 77-6-17 were written on the cave wall. Police were hoping that all of this evidence would lead them to the killer. On June 13, 1977, the bodies of 3 young girls attending Girl Scout camp in Locust Grove, Oklahoma is found stuffed in their sleeping bags along the trail. Police find an overwhelming amount of evidence that points to a 33-year-old man named Jean Leroy Hart. He had been sentenced to life in prison years earlier for kidnapping and sexually assaulting 2 pregnant women. However, he had escaped from jail and believed to still be in the area when the murders took place. Following a 10-month search, a tip led police to a cabin in Cherokee County, 45 miles away from Camp Scott, where they arrested Hart. Remembering that Hart had tried on the eyeglasses of the 2 Tulsa women he assaulted in 1966, and remembering the eyeglasses that were stolen and discarded from the tents at Camp Scott, it was noticed by all of the arresting officers that Hart was wearing women's glasses upon his arrest. A trial took place on March 19, 1979, but the jury found him not guilty and acquitted him. However, he did return to prison for his original crimes, where he died of a heart attack on June 4, 1979, at the age of 35. The case went cold until DNA testing became more advanced. In the 1980s, a decade after Hart's death, a DNA test carried out on case evidence showed 3 of the 5 probes matched Hart's DNA. In 2008, there was a breakthrough when DNA tests were conducted on a pillowcase. Evidence appeared to show a partial female DNA profile. Although the experts confirmed the DNA didn't belong to 2 of the victims, they couldn't exclude the possibility of it belonging to the 3rd victim. However, many people, including Lori Farmer's mother, believe that there was a female present during the murders. Although a lot of evidence points towards Hart, none of it's 100% conclusive and the case remains unsolved. Camp Scott was shut down after the murders and never reopened. The girls' parents became advocates for victims and their families. Michelle Gousset's father established the Victims' Bill of Rights in Oklahoma and the Oklahoma Victims' Compensation Board. This bill keeps victims and families involved in every step of the legal process. Lori Farmer's mother founded the Oklahoma chapter of Parents of Murdered Children. This organization is dedicated to providing assistance and support to families of homicide victims.
Am I wrong for calling my best friend dumb for marrying for love? I, 27 female, am in a very stable relationship with my fiance, 29 female. Oh, whoa, double female. Hold on, gotta do it again. It took me off guard. I, 27 female, am in a very stable relationship with my fiance, 29 female, for around 4 years, and we are planning on getting engaged eventually and then marrying. My best friend Chrissy, 27 female, has been with her own fiance since they were 20. They only got engaged this year, and it was kind of weird how it took him so long to propose since he seemed to be financially stable and all. Throughout the years, I asked Chrissy why her fiance hadn't proposed yet, and she kept insisting it was not just the right time, but she never said the reason why, just that it wasn't the right time. Eventually, he proposed in the beginning of 2022, and they're planning their wedding for next year. They decided to plan their engagement party during the summertime because due to busy schedules, they couldn't do it earlier. So their engagement party was this past Saturday, and her fiance made a speech dedicated to her and mentioned pretty much the reasons they didn't get engaged sooner, and I couldn't help but pity my friend. So the reasons were that he didn't have a stable job for the first few years of their relationship and only jumped from position to position, from Walmart to Target, etc. He hadn't finished his degree yet, so he had no higher education. He got his degree in 2019 and only then was able to get a proper job. He bragged and also thanked Chrissy for never giving up on him and growing with him, and how they helped each other form their amazing personalities and achievements, and how no matter what the future holds, he'll never forget. Aw, this is sweet. Why are you hating on her? My fiance and I felt some type of way about it. Why? Some friends of mine and Chrissy agreed how Chrissy basically stayed with a broke man and waited 7 years, and we don't think that's something praiseworthy but pity-worthy. That's fucked up. Why would you say that? She was only 20. What? Of course he's broke at 20. As friends, we decided to explain to her our perspective of how we think it was ridiculous that she had to almost reach 30 to move on with her life and that man when someone else could provide what she needed much sooner. Ew, you guys are not nice. Chrissy always said how she wanted marriage and kids, and it's sad that she had to wait this long for this man to get his act together, and she didn't know her worth. She said she loves him and he's an amazing partner and wouldn't break up with him over his misfortunes, and what matters is that they love each other. Okay, Chrissy's a real one. Why are you guys hating on her? I don't understand. I told her it's dumb how she's marrying for love and not for stability, and how she's basically wasted herself for love, and how the first issue should be raised when he was working at Walmart and Target back to back. You cannot hate on someone working at Walmart and Target. Like, I don't understand. She called us all materialistic in classes and said she doesn't care if she struggles financially as long as she struggles with the right person who will value her emotions and listen to her. She said we are miserable bitches who will find no happiness in life and are very shallow. Could we be the assholes for criticizing her this way?
Am I wrong for hooking up with my coworker's husband in the McDonald's break room? So, for a little backstory, when I was around 16, I started my first job working at McDonald's. About a year into it, this new cook had transferred to our store. He was older, like in his 30s, but we instantly hit it off and started dating on the down low. Since he was a lot older, I knew that if my family found out about us, they'd try to split us up. Well, after about a year of dating on the down low, that's exactly what happened. My mom was furious when she found out and forced me to cut off all contact with him. She took my phone privileges, wouldn't let me go out unsupervised, etc. However, I'd still see him here and there at work. I got promoted to manager eventually. Shortly after this, another manager who was well into her 40s starts talking to him. This manager is literally the devil. She screams at all of the employees except her one and only offspring, who also works with us and can do no wrong in her mother's eyes. She made multiple employees cry on the job and is just ruthless. Personally, I think she gets off on the power trip. We all hate her with a passion, but she's been working at this place for like 10 plus years and does an early morning shift that no one wants, so she's not going anywhere. Well, they get married pretty quickly, but he was still always messaging me and trying to talk to me when she wasn't around. I tried to do my best to ignore both of them by working opposite shifts because it was too much for me to handle. Seeing them together broke my heart because he was my first love and everything. So a few years go by and she has to go on a trip to see a sick family member for a few weeks. During this time, I take over her shifts and well, he's working at that time too. We both show up to open the store at 4:30 in the morning. At first, I kept it professional and ignored most of the conversations he tried to strike up. However, I eventually gave in and one thing led to another. There's cameras everywhere in the store except the break room. We ended up hooking up in there multiple times before the store opened. One morning, right after we hook up, I look up and see him on his knee with a ring. He had gone to Walmart and bought an engagement ring. He asked me to marry him and said it was the biggest regret of his life. He said that he would leave her for me and that he's never gotten over me. I kind of just shrugged him off because I was just in it for the D, but now he won't stop texting me and I feel kind of bad. So...
Ida for speaking Spanish as a white girl in front of my brother's Hispanic fiancé who doesn't speak Spanish. So, I'm a white woman, 21F, who lives in the southern US. I took an interest to foreign languages in high school because it seemed like something important. I speak Spanish and English fluently, since those two are the most spoken languages in the US, and it seemed important to learn Spanish. I also speak Chinese very well, but not as well as a native speaker. Anyway, my brother has been dating this girl Luisa for several months. He'd mentioned her family is from Mexico. They moved in together recently and threw a housewarming party. It's worth noting that my brother's best friend is Hispanic, his family is from Cuba. My brother speaks a bit of Spanish, he can follow conversations decently, and knows his fair amount of insults. When I get to the party I start chatting up my brother's best friend, and we're talking in Spanish. It's something we've just done for years, we primarily talk in Spanish, because use it, or lose it and all that. My brother and his girlfriend come over, and I said it's nice to meet you, and I include them in what we were talking about. All of this being in Spanish. What happened next made me get a restraining order. Follow for part 2.
Would you like to hear some dark humor in the form of a true story? Oh, you would? Okay, cool. So way back in the day, I was dating this considerably younger dude. He was hot. And I remember being out with my girlfriends and he was blowing up my phone, leaving tons of really hateful, nasty voicemails and text messages like, where the hell are you? Are you out slutting it up? Just nasty. And I remember seeing these and I was like, was he new? And going about my night. And he was new. He didn't understand the mechanics of an abusive relationship. Like, you can't just go 0 to 60. You have to make me like you and love you first. You know? I have to feel safe and think you're wonderful and you have to do nice things for me. And then you can unleash the horrible human that is inside you. I don't make the rules. Unfortunately, that's how it goes. And so I don't remember how, but I had his Facebook password for years, way after we broke up. I don't even think we went out like 3 months. And if you have someone's Facebook password, if you don't use it, you're probably just a way better person than I am. And so I would every once in a while go, oh yeah, I have his Facebook password. I wonder what he's up to. And I would read his messages with his current girlfriends and they were horrific, like so abusive. And I remember like, oh, why are these girls putting up with this? Like, why are they putting up with it and I didn't? And I remembered, I was like, you were never that into him. How sad is that? Because I have been in abusive relationships, unfortunately, and I guess that's the only upside. You start seeing those red flags, but anytime people don't understand why someone stays, it's because it's slow. It doesn't happen overnight. Like this idiot doesn't know. It's dark humor.
What was the happiest mistake you ever made? This didn't happen to me, but it happened to a friend. My friend Tony lived paycheck to paycheck in assorted jobs. He inherited $50,000 when his grandmother passed away. His friends convinced him to invest the money rather than spend it on a new car, vacations, etc., and eventually he agreed. Another friend, Jack, who worked in finance, convinced him to put the $50,000 into Cisco stock. This was back in April 2000, just before the tech bubble burst, and Cisco was at its all-time high, around $75 a share. Then the bubble burst, and the stock crashed. 2.5 years later, we were all at a wedding of a mutual friend, and the friend who recommended Cisco was very embarrassed and apologized profusely for his recommendation. Tony, what do you mean? Why are you sorry you made that recommendation? Jack, because the stock tanked right after you invested, and it's continued to go down and down. Your $50,000 investment is now probably worth $6,000 or $7,000. Haven't you looked at your statements, Tony? Sure, I've looked at the statements. It's up to about $83,000. It's doing great. Jack, you must have misread your statement. Maybe it said $8,300? When was that statement? Tony, maybe 2 weeks ago, and I'm sure it said $83,000. Jack, that's impossible. After the reception we all went back to Tony's apartment and Tony pulled out his last statement, which indeed did say $83,000. Then we saw why. Tony bought the wrong stock. Jack had told him to buy Cisco, the high-tech company, and Tony bought Cisco, the food distribution company. Both stocks are pronounced exactly the same. While Cisco crashed, Cisco did great. So that was a very happy mistake that Tony.
Am I the asshole for demanding my husband cancel his boys' weekend and come home? My husband and I have been married about 6 years and have a 3-year-old daughter, Elle. Prior to getting married and having Elle, we were both very independent people. This hasn't changed. As much as we value our couple family time, we also both cherish time to ourselves and with our own friends. We came up with an agreement that we each get 1 weekend a year to do whatever we like, go away, stay in a hotel, go out with friends, while the other stays home looking after Elle. It's been working really well so far. Well, this past weekend was my husband's time, and he chose a fishing trip with his pals, staying in a cabin roughly 30 minutes away. No problems. Saturday morning, the worst happened. My sister was involved in a serious car wreck. She's on life support. It's touch and go, and I'm devastated. I can't say much more. I called my husband to tell him and asked that he come home ASAP, and he refused. He said it's his weekend, and he'll come by the hospital on Monday. He wasn't totally heartless. He listened to me cry and scream and reassured me that she'd be okay. But how do we know that? He was adamant that he's enjoying the remainder of his weekend and will join me today. My family are noticing his absence, and I'm too embarrassed to tell them. I understand this is interfering with his weekend, but this is my sister, and she's in critical condition. I'm stunned. He's never been this selfish before. I'm angry, upset, confused, and I just don't know what to do. I told him if he didn't come home now, don't bother coming home at all. Now I'm wondering if I was too harsh because I haven't slept in 2 days and I'm a wreck.